I have two brief questions I'd like to ask, if I may.
Hi, welcome to Left Foot Media. My name is Brendan Malone and you're watching The Daily Question. Today's question of the day, does Star Wars have a white male problem? Now, the reason I'm asking that question is because of a brand new article that was posted in the last day or so on sci-fi.com. It's called Star Wars Has a White Male Fandom Problem, and it's by Kayleigh Donaldson. Let's have a look at some of the gems, and I'm just going to quote here some of the phrases that appear consistently in different places in this article. It would be unfair and too general to say that Star Wars has a fandom problem. What it has is a white male fandom problem. Now, you can take out the word fandom out of the second part of that sentence because it's a bit redundant. Here's what she's saying. What the fandom has is a white male problem. The toxicity of white maleness in fandom spaces. What a lovely phrase. Minorities of the fan communities dominated by angry white men. This is the obsessive screed of toxic white masculinity. Star Wars fandom can be a truly beautiful thing, but the rot has festered at its heart thanks to white male entitlement. And then there's this, and I want to talk about not just the statement she uses here in relation to white men, but also the sort of the general gist of what she's talking about, the research aspect of it. As Dr. Becca Harrison's recent study revealed, none of the movies have managed to have complete gender parity. That's the Star Wars movie she's talking about. So none of the Star Wars movies have managed to have complete gender parity in terms of speaking roles. Even The Force Awakens, the film that seemed to kickstart this notion of the death of the white man in Star Wars, only managed 37%. Now, two things here about that last little statement she makes there. First of all, what kind of entitled ivory tower bubble do you have to be living in to sit there through a fantasy film that actually features female lead characters and count exactly the number of words that are being said by each character and then claim that there is some sort of oppression or injustice happening because there wasn't an equal distribution of words between the males and the females in that film? This is just nuts. Like, seriously, I wonder what these people think about this. Do they genuinely believe that they're engaged in some sort of legitimate activism? I'm just like Martin Luther King. I'm just like Harriet Tubman. I'm fighting against oppression. I sat through that film and I counted the words, and you know what I saw? I saw great evil in the film. I saw the evil of an uneven distribution of wordage. This is a great form of oppression. It must be fought against. But more importantly, have a listen to this phrase. The film that seemed to kickstart this notion of the death of the white man in Star Wars. Let's call a spade a spade. What Kayleigh is doing in this article is nothing more than being racist and sexist. This is the very definition of racism and sexism. When you single out a group of people and you speak in a prejudicial and derogatory way about them based on their race or on their sex. And that's exactly what she's done here. She is a racist misandrist. And she doesn't see the irony in this because this is in an article that is all about decrying the supposed racism and sexism in the Star Wars fandom. And yet she's doing it herself. This is insane. Is she sitting there thinking, you know what, the one thing I hate more than racism and sexism, you know what the thing I hate more than that is? It's white men. White men are the one thing I hate more than racism and sexism. Like, this is insane. This is absolutely insane, and it should be called out for what it is. She goes on from there in the article to quote Dan Harmon. Now, she's quoting Dan Harmon in relation to something that happened with the Rick and Morty show, and Dan Harmon tweeted about it. But this tweet, clearly she's indicating in the article that this sentiment, this tweet, isn't just about Rick and Morty fans. It's also about Star Wars fans as well. Let me read what Dan Harmon said. These knobs want to protect the content they think they own and somehow combine that with their need to be proud of something they have, which is often only their race or gender. I loathe these people. Two things straight away. Number one, What kind of intolerant person do you actually have to be to talk about loathing people because of ideas that they have that are different to yours? Surely it's possible for a sane and rational person to separate the person from the ideas that they espouse. You can loathe the ideas. You can hate unjust ideas. You can hate ideas that you strongly disagree with. But the persons themselves, the whole point of tolerance is that it's built on tolerance of the person, even if you want to be intolerant of the ideas that they espouse. It's okay to be intolerant of ideas. But tolerance, the very thing that this community of progressives and particularly strong left-leaning progressives is all about, supposedly, is this compassionate tolerance. This is not compassionate tolerance to say that you loathe a group of people based on their ideas. But secondly, here's the hypocrisy in this. That these people somehow combine that with their need to be proud of something they have, which is often only their race or gender. But isn't that exactly what this whole article is about again? It's about female empowerment and celebrating people of colour. We should be proud of this, and they make Star Wars better, and it's all about people who are not white and being proud of that, them being Star Wars, woman and being proud of that. It's all about celebrating and being proud of race and gender. So why, if it's okay for you to do that, and by the way, I don't have a problem with that, but if it's okay for you to do that, why do you think it would be wrong for another group, a different racial group or a different gender to do the exact same thing? That's the very definition of hypocrisy. There is no philosophical consistency in your position. This is exactly the hallmarks of ideology. Ideology is where you take an idea and you try and impose it upon reality, and even if it doesn't fit, you will try and change reality to make it fit. And one of the hallmarks of ideology is that it's normally never very consistent. It's all over the place, and hypocrisy is one of the things you commonly see. And then, without a hint of irony, she goes on to say this in her article. Listen to this paragraph. And just turn on your irony alert meter and have a listen to what she says. Being a fan can also harbour the worst of us, coddling us at our most reactionary and telling us that we're always right. It can breed a unique kind of paranoia, one that insidiously whispers to us about how nobody gets it quite like you do. It and the like-minded people around you encourage you to protect the thing you love. Eventually, it coaxes you into viewing fandom as a competitive sport, and if you lose, your identity will then turn to dust. For some reason, I imagine Nicolas Cage or Benicio del Toro doing a little dramatic flourish at the end of that turn to dust with a little... something like that. I don't know why, but I do. But anyway, let me go back and read that again. And this time, as I said, if your irony alert meter wasn't on and wasn't buzzing away after reading that, it should be, because this entire paragraph applies to her. This paragraph, which she's using to target another segment of the fan community, is all about her as well. Again, the hypocrisy here is just astounding. Listen to this. Being a fan can also harbour the worst of us, coddling us at our most reactionary. Well, that's exactly what she's doing in this article. This is about as reactionary as you can get. It can breed a unique kind of paranoia. Well, I would say that scrolling through a movie and seeing oppression in an imbalance of wordage, the wordage is not distributed evenly amongst male and female characters, and saying that there's some form of oppression in that is the very definition of a weird and insidious type paranoia. It and the like-minded people around you encourage you to protect the thing you love. That's what this whole article is about. A group of people getting together and saying, we must protect the beast. We must protect the thing we have created. Our child must be nurtured and loved from the evil people who want to destroy our new child, the new Frankenstein we have created from the parts of old dead ideologies. Eventually, it coaxes you into viewing fandom as a competitive sport, and if you lose, your identity will turn to dust. This whole article is about identity politics in Star Wars and celebrating the fact that Star Wars is all about forming people and cementing people and giving people a sense of love for their identity, right? This is her. She says this without any hint of irony. And then to finish it off, the final irony is the final statement of this article, where she says this. The sad thing is that seems to be what these fans want. We can't let that happen. To quote Rose Tico, that's how we're going to win. Not fighting what we hate, saving what we love. And that's the final statement she makes at the end of a very lengthy article, several hundred words expended, fighting something she hates. And then she has the gall to finish it by saying, no, it's not about fighting what you hate. What is this? No, it is not the people who chose not to attend Solo because they were frustrated by the way that the Disney franchise and Lucasfilm has chosen to handle some of their most beloved characters, for example, in The Last Jedi. It's not the way in which those fans have chosen to react because of the way they've been spoken to by some of the creators of this new content and the way in which they've been spoken about in very derogatory ways. And they've chosen to say, well, you know, you're not going to get my money then. Right? Those people are not the people with the problem. And yes, there is a minority, a tiny minority of people, like there is in every group, who do stupid, insane things online and harass people and troll people with all sorts of unacceptable and vile abuse. But that's not the majority of these people who are unhappy with the current shape of Star Wars. It simply isn't. You've lumped them all into this generalized awful racist and sexist rant that you've gone on here, accusing them all of being racist and sexist just because they've disagreed with you. But that's not the problem with the Star Wars fandom. This is the problem with the Star Wars fan base, this stuff here. This ideological hatred, which is tarted up as being some sort of new, enlightened, and progressive form of compassion and tolerance. It's not. This is nothing more than mutton dressed up as lamb. I would suggest that Kayleigh Donaldson needs to take a long, hard look at herself and think about the ideas that she has espoused here. Because in principle, I agree with the point that you shouldn't be a racist, that you shouldn't abuse people, that you shouldn't be a sexist. But you know what else I also believe is fundamentally important? That you should be consistent. You should have integrity in your moral principles. You can't just turn off those moral principles and start being a sexist, racist, and abusing entire groups of people in very unintelligent and generalized ways without even boring down into and understanding the specifics of what's actually going on here, and then claim that you are somehow an enlightened and good person. That's what this virtue signaling article is all about. If you want to read the full article, I'll post a link in the description below so you can read the full context, you can read it all for yourself. In the meantime, I'd love to know your thoughts. The floor is now open, so please let me know what you think in the comment section below. If you like the content I'm creating and you'd like to see more of it, then please support me on Patreon for as little as $1 a month. There's a link in the description below and a link at the end of this video. That's right, I can hear my theme music too. I'll see you next week on The Daily Question.